Tuesday morning isn't disappointing. Power Slap number 10 is taking shape. We've got a new title match added to the card. We've got a match that's been pushed, and we get a match in the 155 division. Ding, a lot has happened already. Let's get into it. Let's unpack it. What a morning it's been.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, a middleweight championship fight. We just had a middleweight championship, just about a month ago. Not even from today. We sit here November 19th. It was on October 24th. We had the middleweight championship change hands. Now Isaiah steps up on what seems like shorter notice than usual. Brandon Bordeaux steps up. There was a lot of questions, right, about who would be next. Would it be Isaiah? Would it be Brandon? We got our answer December 6th. Isaih Quinones defends his championship for the first time against Brandon Bordeaux. Incredible matchup, unexpected. Like you said, Vern Cathy Wolverine gets pushed to Power Slap 11 on January 30th in Saudi Arabia. I'm glad that we know that this was pushed, that this was postponed. We don't know the reason why. We will work to get those details for you, but normally we don't get this kind of information. If a fight's going to be rebooked, right? We saw Austin Turpin versus Russell Rivero. It got canceled. There was some thought that maybe it would be attempted to be rebooked for Power Stop 10. It doesn't look like at this moment that has happened, at least as that we know publicly. We don't know if that's going to be on Power Stop 11. So I do feel a little bit better that we know Wolverine and Vern is going to happen as planned. It's just going to happen a little less than 2 months later. In addition to that, we still have 3 title fights on the card. That's been the big kind of bill, the headline, 3 title fights. So we lost one, but we got one in exchange. And I don't think anybody should be upset about it. And like you said, the lightweight title picture is rounding out here. We have what seems like, or what would seem like to anybody, a lightweight championship contender fight for that second half of that lightweight title picture against Robert Trujillo at some point in the future. Dakota McGregor takes on Anthony DeFrank, an undefeated guy against a guy who came up short in his final match on the show in the lightweight tournament, but he gets his chance at redemption on December 6th. He gets to put himself in the title picture should he be able to get through the maritime menace, Dakota McGregor.
Yeah, I mean, what a way to evolve a card that could have fell apart. I mean, we don't know the reason why this match got pushed, but obviously Isaiah and Brandon. Let's get into that match and let's break that down. Isaiah, freshly coming off of Abu Dhabi, doesn't have a lot of time to really enjoy it. We see he's been enjoying himself. He's getting out there. He's got the belt. He's been a great ambassador so far from, the outside, watching him on social and representing the brand of Power Slap. And he's not going to, sit for long, 5-6 weeks between events. Obviously, he was in shape. He was on weight for that championship match. So he's right in there. It might actually be in some ways be an advantage for him because he was already in camp, already training, all ready to go, didn't have a long layoff. And now he's getting back up there again to defend his title. We're going to see if he can do it again and prove that he's cemented and solid. And ever since he's come down to that middleweight division, he's gone all the way to the top and taking on Brandon Bordeaux, a guy that we haven't seen in a little bit. Brandon Bordeaux, great charisma, great skill set, has had a bit of I'll say zigzag path, hasn't always been the cleanest, the cleanest path for him, some disqualifications and things that he wasn't able to, really show his true skill set, the draw that he had with Eddie Brahimer. And you kind of touched on it a little bit. Was it going to be Azael? Was it going to be Brandon? We thought, and I know we spoke on a previous episode of Smack Talk when we were speaking with Azael, we said, like, if it was John Davis who won that match, getting that third match against John probably wouldn't happen. But now that it was Isaiah, it opened up that door for that possibility. However, the brass of Power Slap went a different direction. Brandon Bordeaux, very deserving of it as well. We talked about it for months now. Who would be that next in line? And we got the answer this morning. 5 rounds. Brandon hasn't gone into those championship rounds yet. We're going to see it on display this time between him and Isaiah. I think this match goes deep. I think it gets into those championship rounds. I think both athletes have a great skill set. They both have incredible defense. And we're going to see whose offense could be put on the line and be able to come out of this one victorious. I seen some people very early on. I was reading the comments on the Power Slap page, and they were saying by the Ron Beta Wolverine and Vern Cathy match getting pushed, that this card got better. Do you echo that sentiment?
No, I don't think so. I don't think it necessarily changes the deepness of the card and sort of the how big of a highlight it can be. I think the key here is that there's multiple elements, and I think what's interesting is that Isaiah and Brandon both agree on how if Brandon should be victorious on December 6th, they both agree on how that needs to happen. And I think from Brandon's standpoint, a little bit of a disadvantage is that he doesn't have as much time to study film as he would normally like. He is a guy that does a lot of film study, which we don't talk too much about in this sport. But I think based on what he said before the middleweight championship fight between John Davis and Isaih Quinones happened on October 24th, he believed that Isaiah would get this done. So if my assumptions are correct, something tells me Brandon Bordeaux's been watching Isaih Quinones for a long time, and he knew that this day would come. So I think, although on the surface it may appear like he's taking a short notice fight and doesn't have the time to prepare, I do believe that he's been keeping his eye on the champion before he was the champion. On the other side of that, Isaih Quinones, I think he really relies a lot on the defensive side, his toughness. Nobody's going to get through him. Nobody's going to be able to push through his chin. On the flip side, when it comes to offense, obviously a very, very powerful person. Brandon Bordeaux is a very tough character, and he talked about utilizing technique to, quote, rip Isaiah's chin right off the front of his face. And so I think that's the interesting part here. I think people were counting Wolverine out, and so I think that's why I don't see any real difference per se in excitement, because I think I was excited to see what Wolverine could do. I think the vast majority of people that I heard from, that I saw in the comments, were saying Wolverine was losing this fight, and I don't think that's fair for a person who has gone through what he's gone through, who's been around as long as he's been around. I thought that Wolverine had a better shot than that, so I was pretty excited to see what was going to take place on December 6th, but now I'm even more excited to see what's going to take place on January 30th.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk FAP. Appreciate you always being here to support us. Yes, that is correct. Isaih Quinones, Brandon Bordeaux replacing Wolverine versus Vernon Cathy. Power slap number 10. The match between Wolverine and Vernon Cathy has been pushed to power slap number 11. I mean, that match, as you just touched on a little bit, one that I wouldn't necessarily on the surface make sense to go overseas. Vernon Cathy, and Ron Bata, both middle America, small town, Southern guys, you think that home cooking, American bread. I'm not sure if either of them have ever actually left the country, but they are this time going to go overseas and experience the culture of Saudi Arabia. So interesting to see that kind of falls into fruition. And like, as you said earlier, we'll try to see if we can get some information as to why that match was pushed. And if we do, we'll definitely let you guys know. That match there, incredibly exciting. As you said, it's quite odd, but it's not the first time that we've seen it in Power Slap, that the champion, kind of gets dogged going into these matches. And I think we've seen more times than not, the champion usually has that upper hand. A lot of people like the speculation, the idea. And I think sometimes if you say, and you bet on the champion or the winner and you're right, you don't get any merit. You don't get any bragging rights. But if you put it out on the line, you make it real, you tweet it, you put it on Instagram, you put it on Facebook, that you're going for the underdog, and it happens, then you have all the glory to baste in. And if it doesn't, I see a lot of you guys, you delete those tweets, you delete those posts. It never happened. But in those moments that you're right, you boast about it, you retweet it, everything else. So, you kind of see that sentiment. We talked before, there's a ton of levels to this. We've seen people, count out the crazy Hawaiian, and those people have been proven wrong time and time again, as he still sits here at the top. So those two matches, incredibly good matches that we get to see, and we don't have to wait long. I mean, we're getting these in consecutive order, 5-6 weeks apart. We're starting to get these matches in advance. We can build the anticipation. I mean, it's really starting to feel like we're moving into that second gear of Power Slap, and we're starting to get more regularity. We're getting more certainty. We're getting matches sooner than we ever have before. And these things just kind of keep coming at us. And I actually kind of like it, to be quite honest. I mean, I'd rather get these matches sooner than later. We're getting dripped information, gives us things to talk about and things to get excited about as we push forward. And I mean, the marketing that they're doing, I think, has been ratcheted up. I think they're creating the excitement and the buzz around these particular events. I think they're doing it right. We know the fight business, things change all the time. I'm sure 1 or 2 matches will change from now until, the card as well. It just seems to be one of those situations where things, always change. I mean, we were just getting on the plane going over to Abu Dhabi, and literally within the first hour of the plane on Wi-Fi, we get the news of Russell Turpin and Austin Turpin and Russell being canceled. And so I'm sure from now until then, I'm sure this card's not cemented yet. Things always change as we go, but really it makes it exciting through, through and through. And I think really, the way that this card is stacked, like you said, 3 title fights gives us a ton of value for the ticket. You're going to get a ton of entertainment, whether you're there live or watching it on Rumble. And then we get, as you alluded to earlier, a contender match, seemingly in the 155 division between Anthony DeFrank and Canadian Dakota McGregor. Let's break this one down.
Yeah, I mean, you're looking at 2 guys who rose up through the show. Obviously, Anthony DeFrank came up short against Joshua Bovaert, who was to be Dakota McGregor's opponent at Power Slap number 9. Unfortunately, that did not happen. So we see Dakota McGregor get the call for the subsequent event, Power Slap 10, which we sort of expected. But Anthony DeFrank gets a unique and rare chance at redemption. He should not be where he's at right now, and I think that he knows that. Right? He lost in the last string of the show. Dakota won. This was originally supposed to be Joshua Bovaert. If Joshua Bovaert showed up on the night, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And I don't think that Anthony DeFrank is unrealistic about that. I think he knows that this is a shot that he got, and he's going to take advantage of that. This is a guy who we saw incredible power from in his first fight. In his second fight, we saw incredible defense. And it was not without adversity. Unfortunately, he gets finished in the third. A little bit of a controversial finish with the standing wave off. But you look at a guy like Dakota McGregor, he's, again, not a guy that has not faced adversity. And I think that's always the question, right? I always think back to Kalani, right, specifically, and I'm not picking on him. I love the guy. But Kalani was the guy at the beginning of the Crazy Hawaiians, dominance over the super heavyweight division. And it wasn't until we saw what Kalani was made of, meaning what it looked like to get hit, how he absorbed that we realized that there was a difference in the levels here. And I think when you look at these guys, they both face adversity. So there's no question that they're going to be able to go back and forth, dish them and take them. And this will be an absolutely entertaining fight. And if I'm being honest with you, I think that's what the opponents of a guy like Robert Trujillo have failed at in the past, is that they have not been able to withstand that adversity. It mounts and it collides and it compounds, and they get out of there. And so if these guys are looking to the future, which I think that they are, and they understand that they're knocking at the door of a guy named Robert Trujillo after this fight, then I think that they're prepared to utilize the adversity that they're going to, 1, impose on one another, and 2, absorb as a result of the devastating strikes that we expect them both to dish. I believe that that'll help them as they're on that quest to realize, championship medal in Power Slap.
Absolutely. I mean, these guys come from polar opposite, ends of the spectrum in North America. Let's, to be honest, we've got Dakota McGregor, East Coast, small town, rural community, hardworking tradesman, versus a guy in Anthony DeFrank, Staten Island, New York. I'm not exactly sure where he's at, but just very different upbringing mentality, kind of a bit of a social star. I know they've both faced adversity in their personal lives in different ways. So maybe they're more battle tested than we actually know. As you talked about the loss that DeFrank has taken, he's had a long time to sit there and think about getting that opportunity and how to correct that. But then we also know Dakota McGregor on his way to the airport to fight Joshua Bovaert in Abu Dhabi gets a call and says that the match has been canceled. So we know he is probably chomping at the bit to get back up there and put his skill set on the line. And the crazy thing about this entire thing, Dakota, declared to us after, was that on the way back, he had a layover in New York, and he was going to do a fundraiser with Anthony DeFrank around Power Slap in New York City. Unfortunately, that got canceled because the match got canceled, and he never made it to New York to make that happen. So there's definitely a friendship and a camaraderie that previously existed from the show. I think a lot of that has changed now that this match has been announced, And these guys are going to essentially have all the marbles on the line. You want to talk about Road to the Title season 3, about being a tournament in the brackets and, going for that title. Well, now this really is like that semifinals that sets you up for what we believe to be Robert Trujillo at a future event. Could we get that event as soon as Power Slap 11, do you think, Ding, in Saudi Arabia?
I mean, it's not as fast as the turnaround between Power Slap 9 and Power Slap 10 for a guy like Isaih Quinones. So I don't think it's out of the question. One thing I do want to highlight on the subject of Isaih Quinones, is that he was expected to be a coach at this event, right? It was to be the Crazy Hawaiian from what we understood and Isaih Quinones. I am going to say that I trust that this is the case. But it seems like right as of right now, the coaches will be the Crazy Hawaiian and Robert Trujillo for Power Slap number 10. And the reason that I point that out is that Robert Trujillo will have a front row seat to see, in theory, whether that's he's their coach or he's not. He will have a front row seat to see his future contender, for the lightweight championship. That is to be, whether that's at 11, 12, 13, whatever. And I think that that's really interesting because most people don't get that opportunity. And so now with all these movements, the Isaiah Brandon fight being added, Vernon and Wolverine being moved, has nothing to do with him. But somehow it all came full circle, and now he's positioned himself to be front row to watch this thing take place. And who knows, maybe on the night, we've seen in the UFC before where the next guy kind of has they get in the octagon and they have a face-off. I don't know that things will go that way, but one of the things that you cannot control is if these guys will have words up there because they know what's coming next. So I'm very interested to see what will happen on that night. And I think that the future is very, very bright for the lightweight division. And keep in mind, that doesn't mean that Joshua Bavera is not still in the picture. We don't know as of now why, specifically what happened that led to Power Slap 9 falling apart for him. But, that doesn't mean that, he's a guy that has not lost. So no matter what, I do think he has a stake to claim. Should the lightweight championship match take place, he could definitely be next in line for a guy, depending on who the victor of that match is. So definitely keep Joshua Bavera in mind in this full picture.
Yeah, I mean, there's two things there to unpack. First off, and we got to talk about this tomorrow. So tune in, Smack Talk Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. in the East. We'll get into this. But you've got Dakota McGregor and you've got Anthony DeFrank. As you alluded to, Robert Trujillo will coach one of these two athletes for a potential and or future match at a title shot. Should that be allowed? Should that be part of it? Do you think Robert Trujillo can be unbiased? You better tune in tomorrow to find out. We'll get into it. We'll break it down. And if you were in that situation, would you elect to have Robert Trujillo as a coach, or would you maybe potentially elect to not have a coach in that situation? Time will tell. We'll get into it. We'll break it down. We'll talk to some of the strikers about it. But you're going to tune in 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. in the East. But then the second part that I wanted to talk about there is Power Slap has kind of given us hints in the past. Damien DeBell being a coach in Abu Dhabi. We get a title shot from him. Power Slap number 10. Do we feel? And I think the echo in the segment is yes, by them showcasing Robert Trujillo and showcasing the Crazy Hawaiian, that we are going to get these two athletes back up there very, very soon in Power Slap. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, history has shown, with the exception of a guy like Alan Klingbeil, which was obviously a short notice step in, I think that the intent is to have these people there that are coaching, that are going to be involved in some sort of picture very soon. Obviously, we saw with a guy like John Davis. You mentioned Damien DeBell's been a coach a couple of times. Robert Trujillo's another guy that they look to coach. At one point in time, it was Ryan Phillips, right? Very often. We also saw Wolverine up there at one point. So I do think that you're onto something. Whether or not those things will take place in Saudi Arabia, I don't exactly know. But I think that all of this is very exciting. And the fact that we now know a match for Saudi Arabia is very, very compelling.
Absolutely. And I mean, things make a lot of sense when you put it in line. The Crazy Hawaiian is going to get that shot against Dumpling. Would make sense to do it in Saudi Arabia. Obviously, Dumpling can come down from Russia, obviously, as he did with in Abu Dhabi. Could we get 3 title matches? Could they add that Robert Trujillo fight? Very, very likely. But we'll see. I mean, it keeps on moving. Things surprise us every day. Man, is there anything we missed today? Are you checking social as we go? Because it seems every time I open up the app, there's a new announcement from Power Slap coming out. So
Yeah,
are we up to
we
date?
expect some more stuff. I think they've done enough for today. Power Stop. If you guys are checking this out, please give us a break here. We can only go live so many times, but we had
We don't
quite a
need a
few
break.
announcements today, and so we didn't want to miss any of this stuff. But interesting piece I just want to highlight that you sort of glazed over earlier. We have heard it, and I believe it was on Smack Talk, if I'm not mistaken. It may have been on the Final Slap, but at one point in time, Wolverine did say he really had no interest fighting overseas. And so that hesitancy and that reluctance to do that, with him actually, going ahead and at this point, we know he's going to do that. He's going to travel, halfway across the world to defend his championship. I'm interested how that'll impact him, because it doesn't seem like he's super excited to go there, or that he was at that time. We'll obviously aim to get an update from Wolverine, to talk to him, to see what we can unpack from the situation. But from everything that we were told, both him and even his wife, he said, are not interested in, at the time it was Abu Dhabi. Obviously now we're talking about Saudi Arabia, not very, very far off. He just didn't have the interest in doing it. So I think that that's important also. How badly do you want to be there? And if you don't want to be there, how does that all play into things? Because most people agree this is very, very largely over, more than half mental. And so if you're mentally in a place where you don't want to be, does that impact your performance? I don't know. But again, I think people were not giving and are not giving Wolverine the credit he deserves. I think he's proven himself. He's proven that he can shake through adversity. He's never lost at light heavyweight. I think that matters. And I think that the champion deserves a little more respect. That's not to knock Vern's skill set. I think there's a question on his side. Can he finish? Can he put a stamp on this new era of Vern Cathy? Can he put the cherry on top and cement himself as the new light heavyweight champion after starting his career on a very rocky road? I think that there's some questions there, and I do believe that he deserves respect for how far he's come despite early adversity in his career. So I just think on both sides that there's probably more to this than just Vern's going to go out there and knock Wolverine out. I don't believe that will be the case. If at Power Stop 11 that's what happens, then I'll come on here and I'll say I was completely wrong, but I don't believe that that's how it goes.
Yeah, I mean, we'll find out soon. I'm sure we'll talk to Wolverine, and we'll talk to Vernon Cathy and get some in-depth details of the entire thing. All right, my man, we're back tomorrow, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. in the East for Smack Talk. Unless we get more breaking news of this type of magnitude, we'll come on and see you. But we appreciate everybody joining in. Much love, much respect. We'll see you guys back again soon.